The number one weed that our team works on at the University of Tennessee is annual bluegrass. In this video, we'll review research on strategies for controlling annual bluegrass in Ultradwarf Bermudagrass putting greens. So in any research test, it's important to have non-treated control plots, and that's what we're looking at here. So this is a non-treated plot of Tiff Eagle. This is a Tiff Eagle Ultradwarf Bermudagrass research green at our research station in Knoxville with a healthy infestation of herbicide susceptible Poa annua, which you can see here. The green in these plots is the Poa annua, and the brown is going to be our dormant Tiff Eagle. This green is managed like any ultra-dwarf green. When we have weather conditions for winter covering, we cover the green with winter protective covers, and then we take it off when conditions are suitable for taking the covers off. We try to mimic what our golf courses in the region are doing. Obviously, during winter dormancy, the site is not mowed. It doesn't receive any PGR applications in the winter. I know that some ultra-dwarf greens are treated with PGRs in the winter. We don't have that regime at this site. Another thing to keep in mind here is that we have better data now than we did a few years ago about when Poa annua emerges in Bermudagrass fairways. Former graduate student Dallas Taylor, she did a master's, a 2-year project modeling annual bluegrass emergence in Tiffway hybrid Bermudagrass fairways. So we have good indicators of when emergence begins to happen, and when we see kind of the bulk or biggest flush of our emergence in fall. We don't have the same benchmarks for ultra-dwarf greens at present, and it's one of the things that can make control, particularly from a pre-emergent standpoint, difficult. So the timings that we'll walk through in this test will be a little bit different than what we would talk about, say, pre-emergence control for fairways. It's going to be different when we think about pre-emergence control on greens. So in this experiment, we're going to look at things that are labeled, and we're also going to look at some treatments that don't currently have labeling. And the rationale for doing that is if we see things that have promise, we as the University of Tennessee will continue to research these and then hopefully be able to acquire some 24C labeling for use in our state if the treatments fit a major need. And we know that annual bluegrass control in the ultra-dwarfs certainly is a major need given the extent of resistance issues, particularly to ALS chemistry that are out there. What we're looking at here, this is a application of Ronstar G, so the granular formulation of Ronstar. This was applied to this green on September 23rd at 100 pounds and watered in. And we can see here that our annual bluegrass control from this treatment, when we compare it to what we saw in the non-treated check, is really excellent. And this is a promising lead in terms of a new idea for controlling annual bluegrass on the ultra-dwarfs. So this treatment, this is the same Ronstar application applied on the same date, September 23rd. We've just increased our rate from 100 pounds up to 200 pounds, and we can see that we are definitely clean here. I think one of the things that we will need to monitor on these plots as we move forward is how they transition out of dormancy in the spring and green up, but from a control standpoint, certainly both of these, and particularly this treatment at 200 pounds, Ronstar G has done really, really excellent given the pressure of the infestation at this site. So this is another treatment that is currently not labeled for use on the ultra-dwarfs, but one that we are exploring with hopes of potentially getting a 24C label. This is Regal Star 2, a mixture of oxadiazone and prodiamine, here at 100 pounds per acre, applied September 23rd, and we can see our annual bluegrass control from this treatment is really excellent. So this is another Regal Star 2 treatment. This is Regal Star 2 at 200 pounds, applied on that same late September date. We can see here, again, our annual bluegrass control is excellent. I should note that on none of the oxidiazone containing treatments that we looked at, so neither the 2 Ronstar G rates or the Regal Star 2 that we've seen here, did we see any injury to the Tiff Eagle, and these were watered in immediately after application. So what we see in this plot is this is freehand at 200 pounds per acre. Again, this currently does not have labeling for use on Ultradwarfs, but it is something that we are exploring as a potential 24C option for turfgrass managers down the road. This was applied on November 9th. The idea behind that application timing was to capitalize on what we've learned with fairway applications, that we know that the dimethylamide component in freehand can control juvenile annual bluegrass seedlings, and then the pendimethalin obviously will give us residual control of seedlings that have not yet germinated. And what we can see here is that our annual bluegrass control efficacy, particularly when we compare this to non-treated plots, is really excellent. So this is another option that is currently not labeled, but something that we began researching in 2019 on the Ultradwarfs and have continued to research throughout 2020. And this is sequential applications of Tower for Poa annua control. Here we have 2 applications of Tower. The first was made at 32 fluid ounces per acre on November 9th, and then this received a sequential treatment 4 weeks later on December 9th at the same 32 ounce rate. And you can see the Poa annua control resulting from those applications. Definitely less than the non-treated check, but not what we would hope for in terms of overall efficacy. And one of the things that we've talked about internally is the timing piece here, that we really haven't figured out what is the optimal timing for the Ultradwarfs that aligns with kind of the early post window that we see on fairways, and that is certainly an area for future research. So this is another Tower treatment. Again, this is not currently labeled for use on the Ultradwarfs, but something that we are researching. And here we have made 3 applications, one on November 9th, one on December 9th, and then another in January, all at the 21 fluid ounces per acre rate. And we can see the Poa annua control that has resulted from that. And again, I think the timing piece is something that we need a better understanding of in order to optimize this use pattern. But it is evidence that Tower as a standalone does have activity on Poa annua, and it's something that we, I think, can refine for management programs on the Ultradwarfs with future research. So here we have the liquid freehand concept, essentially. Freehand is a granular herbicide containing dimethylamide and pendimethalin, and many superintendents that have used this on higher height of cut turf, particularly around bentgrass greens, have taken to making their own mixture with the liquid products, which are sold as standalones. The way that works is Tower as a liquid herbicide, standalone product containing dimethylamide, Pendulum Aquacap, liquid product sold as a standalone containing pendimethalin. They've mixed those two together and sprayed it instead of trying to spread a granule. This is not a labeled option for the Ultradwarfs, but something that we are researching. And you can see here the results of this application. Tower at 32 ounces, Pendulum at 32 ounces. Again, not what we would hope for from an efficacy standpoint, and a lot of that's probably timing related. Initiating this program in November was probably a little bit too late from what we saw with emergence over the course of the fall of 2020, and to have a better trigger for when to start on the Ultradwarfs is certainly a need. Next treatment here is labeled for greens use. This is Poa Cure. A lot of interest in Poa Cure as a new herbicide for putting greens, particularly on bentgrass greens. But one of the things that we wanted to look at on the Ultradwarfs, given the scope of resistance issues that are out there, and I think that this plot really is a valuable teaching tool in that PoaCure is a herbicide. It's a new mode of action. It can help us with resistance management. But one of the things you need to know is that it's going to be a sequential application program. Here, we've taken the 0.2 gallon rate from the PoaCure label, and that's 0.2 gallons of product per acre. Made that application on November 9th, and we only made one single application. We watered it in, and you can see the results remaining from that. Not what we would hope for. Here is what we would hope for when using PoaCure for controlling the Ultradwarfs. In this plot, we have made two applications at that same 0.2 gallons per acre rate. One in November, one in December, and we can see the jump in efficacy from two applications. And it's not perfect. We can see there are some straggler plants remaining throughout this plot. It probably would have benefited for a third application, from a third application as well. And there are fairly detailed use directions on the PoaCure label about when to apply the product based on where you are geographically in the United States in regards to seasonality. One of the things that we've seen in bentgrass trials is applications to bentgrass, particularly in periods of freezing temperature, is something that we want to avoid. So this treatment, this is an interesting one. Sencor generated a lot of interest amongst golf course superintendents in the summer of 2020, predominantly for goosegrass control. We wanted to look at it as a POA control option. It does have labeling for POA control. It is not labeled for use on greens, and that's an important disclaimer with the treatment that you're looking at. Here, what we did was we combined this with Katana, made an application on November 9th. Idea would be to have two modes of action together and see what that could do from a POA control standpoint. And you can see the results that we've certainly knocked down our population compared to the non-treated, but it is not 100% control with that application. Some of that could be timing related, some of that could be related to other factors. We just need more work exploring Sencor on the Ultradwarfs. So what we see here is an interesting comparison with the plot we just looked at. This is Sencor applied at 6 ounces by itself on November 9th. And we can see that our overall Poa annua control here is fairly low. We did see some injury from Sencor alone. Not a lot of injury, but enough that would be noticeable on a putting green. And when we contrast this with the Sencor Katana treatment that we just saw, one of the takeaways that you can glean from that is that the efficacy of the Sencor Katana mixture is probably coming from the Katana, because Sencor by itself here is not really giving us what we would hope for from an annual bluegrass control standpoint. So this is manuscript at the lower spot treatment rate, 0.96 fluid ounces per thousand, mixed with Adigor, a proprietary adjuvant from Syngenta. This was included in our test based on some work that came out of Australia looking at the efficacy of pinoxidin, the active ingredient in manuscript for Poa annua control. And we did not see in this test the success that we had hoped for with that application. So this is Pennant Magnum applied on November 9th. Again, this is another option that does not currently have labeling for use on the Ultradwarfs. This was included based on what we had seen with Tower, another long-chain fatty acid inhibitor, group 15. Idea was, well, if we saw some POA efficacy out of Tower, maybe the same would be true with the Pennant Magnum application, and we did not see that in this experiment. This is now a combination of manuscript Adigor plus Pennant, again applied on that same date in November, and not really seeing the efficacy that we would hope for from that treatment. So what we're looking at here does have labeling for use on the Ultradwarfs. This is Curb SC, 2 applications at 15 fluid ounces, one on October 7th and another made on November 9th. and we can see here that the results of this are excellent. I know many have turned to curb for Poa annua management, particularly in situations where ALS resistance has evolved. So what we have here is another curb-based program. Instead of using 2 applications to get to 30 ounces, we're doing it in 3. So this is 3 applications at 10 ounces, one October 7th, another November 9th, and then a third December 9th. And again, results here are excellent. So this is a mixture of curb at 2.5 pints with Katana, and this has become a treatment of interest for us, given that we know that continued use of curb alone is only going to select for resistant biotypes over time, and we have reports of that already in Georgia. So we know that mode of action diversity is going to be helpful, and here we've taken an ALS inhibitor in Katana, put it with curb, applied on November 9th, and seen really good results. So this is a 3-way mixture, curb Katana, a little bit lower rate of curb in this mix, and we've now included tower to go with it. So we have three modes of action in our tank. The tower would take this from a labeled application to a non-labeled application at present, but certainly, again, one of those things that we're hopeful for in 24C labeling to try to get tower available as a tool for Poa management on the Ultradwarfs. It's been proven useful in fairways, and we think it could prove useful on the Ultradwarfs as well. And if this treatment is any evidence, this 3-way mixture of Katana, curb, and tower has done quite well in this experiment. Here we have another 3-way mixture, Katana, benzimec, and tower. Similar story, 100% control. Applied November 9th, and it's done really well. So we have another mixture here, Katana, 2.5 ounces with curb, and then the 9-ounce rate of Exonerate. Again, this is another option that does not currently have labeling for use on the Ultradwarfs, and this was applied November 9th, and results are excellent. 3 modes of action together in a mixture at an early post-emergent stage. Certainly a really good use pattern. So this is a little bit of a different concept. Here we have a benzimec application. This was made on September 23rd. The idea was for this to be pre-annual bluegrass or Poa annua emergence, and then coming in November with that curb Katana mixture that we saw earlier. And the results here speak for themselves. Really great control from that concept. What we have here is a similar kind of 2-shot concept, if you will, where we've taken benzimec, we've applied this pre at 9 fluid ounces per 1,000, and then this will be treated with Katana and Exonerate in the spring of 21. It has not received that application as of this filming. So this kind of speaks to really what benzimec did as a standalone in this experiment, treatment applied pre-emergence in September. So this is another 2-shot regime. Here we've taken Anderson's Crab and Goose, a labeled option for annual weed control on putting greens. I know there's a lot of use of this product, particularly on bentgrass greens for goosegrass control in late spring / early summer. Here we've applied this in late September, September 23rd, to a Tiff Eagle green for pre-emergence control of annual bluegrass, and come back into that green in November with a curb Katana mixture, and you can see that our efficacy here is excellent. This is one of the standout treatments of the test. This is another 2-shot concept where we've taken Anderson's Crab and Goose again, applied it pre on September 23rd. This will get a treatment of Katana and Exonerate in the spring. It has not been applied as of this filming, and this kind of shows you what that Anderson's product by itself would really look like. And in the previous plot, we saw the Anderson's product followed by a mixture in November. So if we want to be clean in the spring, it kind of tells us that we can't rely just on a sole application of a pre, that having something go out in November is really going to be critical. So overall, we've looked at a number of different options for Poa annua control on Tiff Eagle, and some of these are labeled at present, some of them are not labeled at present. Do not use anything that is not labeled for use on your putting surfaces. The label is the law and it needs to be followed. One of our job as researchers is to try to explore and discover new options to help the industry, and that's what we're doing in these trials, is trying to find new options that hopefully will gain labeling for you down the road. So please only rely on labeled options, and I think when you look at kind of the overarching themes of this experiment, we know that mixtures are going to be very helpful for us, and without having a good feel on timing, we know that mixtures applied in say November in Tennessee are going to be a good approach on the Ultradwarfs. If we really want to cover ourselves on all fronts, we do have the Anderson's Crab and Goose product that is labeled for use on putting surfaces pre, and one of the most successful treatments in this test was that applied pre, followed by a mixture of curb and katana, so 2 modes of action in November. So hopefully this helps. This is certainly going to be an area of future research for the University of Tennessee moving forward. I'd like to take a moment to thank multiple groups that have supported the research that you've seen in this video and other videos on Poa annua control from the University of Tennessee. With all of our trial work, everything you've seen in this video has been replicated at other locations across the state, and I'd like to thank all of the superintendents within the Tennessee Golf Course Superintendents Association that have supported that work and been host sites for trials. We really couldn't do it without you, and having multiple locations really gives us more confidence and more power to the results. So thank you to those that have helped with auxiliary sites. I'd like to thank the East Tennessee Research and Education Center, kind of the home to UT Turfgrass Research, for providing us a facility and opportunity to do the bulk of our work that we do in the Turfgrass Weed Science program. I'd also like to thank the Tennessee Turfgrass Association, as well as the Tennessee Valley Sports Turf Managers Association for their support, not only of this research, but all the research we do within the UT Turfgrass program. And then lastly, I'd like to thank numerous industry supporters, particularly those that have submitted treatments for inclusion in these programs. Having your support to do this work and provide turfgrass managers solutions to this problem of Poa annua control in turf is much appreciated, so thank you for that.